Hello, the crowd killers. Yeah, you. The ones who didn't show up to be adored, clapped for, or remembered, but still managed to leave the arena in ruins before the echo of their praise could even form. See, you're not here to make noise. You're here to make absence feel louder than their existence. And that's exactly what happened the day you dismantled their GO.A.T. Not in front of the cameras, not under the spotlight, but before the bleachers even knew what side to cheer for. You didn't crave their throne. You walked in and made their kingdom collapse under the weight of its own vanity. You knew something they didn't. Real power never enters to compete. It enters to end. And when the game was rigged, you didn't ask for a fair shot. You cracked the whole board and walked away, while their golden boy choked on his own legacy. They built him up to be a monument, a myth, a messiah. But monuments don't move, and myths don't adapt. You did. You moved in shadows they couldn't even detect, adjusted while they were busy celebrating premature victories. And then, boom, gone. Not just their GO.A.T, but their goddamn illusion. See, the thing is, they thought your silence was respect. They misread your stillness as admiration. They never realized you were simply loading, calculating, creating a psychological ricochet so precise that by the time you struck, their champion had already lost. Mentally, his crown, symbolic, his fans, noise, his legacy, fragile. You knew it was only a matter of time before the system that built him would forget him. And you were just the glitch that accelerated that oblivion. You didn't defeat their GO.A.T. You deleted the algorithm that made him matter. You proved something terrifying. That hype can't survive in a room where the real architect never speaks, never flexes, just delivers endings. You were surgical, no dramatics, no headlines. You left before the crowd even stood up, before the anthem played, before they knew who to blame. That's what makes you lethal, not the strike, but the vanishing act. You don't want to be remembered. You want to be questioned. Who was that? How did it happen so fast? Why didn't we see it coming? Because you don't fight for attention. You manufacture regret. And here's the raw truth. Their GO.A.T wasn't built for war. He was built for the crowd, designed to perform, trained to entertain. And while they were feeding him accolades, feeding him delusion, feeding him illusions of immortality, you were starving. Not for fame, for impact. You were watching how he moved, listening to how he spoke, studying how he breathed, not to mimic, but to map his expiration. That's the difference between their icon and your design. He was made for applause. You were forged for aftershocks. You didn't train in public. You didn't leak your blueprints. You didn't need noise. You made a ritual out of irrelevance until it was time. And when that time came, you didn't strike out of envy. You struck out of inevitability. They thought he was the peak. You proved he was the decoy. You let them crown him king while you studied the trapdoor under his throne. You let them run the highlights while you planted decay behind his triumphs. And now, he's a ghost in a suit of applause. A fallen name buried beneath one question they refused to say out loud. Did we back the wrong one? You weren't flashy. You were flawless. Because you understood this battlefield ain't about who roars loudest or who gets the standing ovation. It's about who leaves before the ashes settle. While their champion still hasn't figured out what just hit him. And that's the kind of warfare they're not trained for. Psychological, philosophical. Designed not to wound, but to erase belief systems. When you take out the GO.A.T before the game even peaks, you don't just end a career. You redefine the criteria for greatness. Now everyone in the audience is questioning everything they ever cheered for. Their fans are confused. Their analysts are spinning. Their legacy? Shattered before it even matured. Because you didn't fight a person. You annihilated a narrative. And once that narrative burns, no PR team, no media cycle, no redemption arc can salvage the ruins. You left early, and yet somehow, your absence is still louder than his prime. That's the kind of warfare they'll never recover from. Not because it was brutal, but because it was philosophically perfect. You took the concept of dominance and flipped it on its head. You didn't prove you're better. You proved they never understood what better even means. And now, they're spiraling. They've realized that their idea of the best was just a reflection of comfort zones. You came from outside that system, unlabeled, unpredictable, unbothered. While they wore brands and medals and status, you wore absence like armor. You didn't announce your presence. You dismantled theirs. And the best part? They can't recreate what you did. Because it wasn't style, it was strategy. It wasn't aggression, it was precision. And now they're searching for another champion, another savior, another hero to avenge the fall. But it's too late. The script's already corrupted. The moment they saw their goat crumble without a battle cry, the infections spread. Doubt, insecurity, fear. You weaponized their expectations and turned them into confusion. You didn't bring chaos, you unveiled it. It was always there behind the gold frames and victory speeches. And now, every rising star they try to promote will carry the curse of comparison. Every future GOAT will be haunted by the one who didn't stay long enough to claim the trophy, but still redefined the scoreboard. You never wanted the spotlight. You wanted results. And results don't come with confetti. They come with silence in the arena. They come with whispers. They come with confusion that spreads like wildfire. And that's what you left behind. A room full of people who don't know what just happened, but can't stop replaying it in their minds. That's the kill shot, not the fall, but the loop. The obsession, the psychological replay of your vanishing act. You broke more than a record. You broke their formula. And now, as they scramble to understand how their brightest light dimmed so suddenly, your legend begins, not with a headline, but with a haunting question. And that question will echo through every bleacher, every boardroom, every back room where strategy fails and instinct wins. Because when the dust settles and the replays run dry, all they'll have left is the unsettling truth. You took out their GOAT and left before the crowd even knew who to cheer for. Now the game has changed. And so is the definition of legend, not the kind built through speeches or documentaries, but the kind that shows up like a disruption and leaves like a damn prophecy. That's you. And now, they can't even clap properly. Their palms hesitate, their voices crack. Because somewhere deep in their collective memory, they know what just happened wasn't just an upset. It was a seismic event, a blueprint burn. This isn't just about beating someone. It's about undoing their existence so cleanly, so decisively, that it corrupts the belief system that allowed them to rise in the first place. That's why they're scrambling now. Because every formula they trusted, hard work, reputation, training, legacy, it all collapsed when you exited the room. And not because you were bigger, faster, louder. No, you were simply accurate. You weren't trying to win. You were trying to erase the premise of their win being possible. That's the kind of strike that breaks more than pride. It breaks continuity. You turned their golden boy into a footnote in someone else's cautionary tale. And they're scared now. Not because they lost, but because they don't know what you'll target next. You weren't a challenger. You were a disruption, a metaphysical interruption to their timeline. That's what legends do. They don't walk in to play. They walk in to reset the script entirely. Their analysts are still on air talking hypotheticals. If he had one more chance. If the ref didn't call it. If the lighting wasn't off. If. But you weren't playing what if. You were playing what now. And the answer? There is no now. You left before time could catch up. And that's why this haunts them, because you didn't stick around to soak in the aftermath. You didn't post a quote. You didn't flex online. You didn't even turn around to admire the collapse. You moved forward like it never happened. Because to you, it didn't. You weren't there for the win. You were there to expose the fraudulence of their entire ecosystem, and now it's breaking from the inside. Fans are questioning their loyalty. Coaches are rethinking their doctrines. Sponsors are hesitating. And the worst part, your name isn't even trending. Because you made sure the Echo couldn't find you. You unplugged from their machine before they even knew what machine they were in. That's the real terror you left behind, untrackability. Because if they could define you, they could excuse what happened. But you didn't give them that. You left like a paradox, too fast to follow, too deep to dismiss. And now their GO.A.T, he's a king without a castle, a symbol without a system. You stripped him of context. And once a man is removed from the myth, all that's left is a question with no answer. Let that sink in. The man they rehearsed tributes for now walks in his own shadow. The one they called unbeatable is now only referenced in defeat. And the one who was supposed to inspire generations now gets spoken about in hushed tones, like a lesson. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't rivalry. This was reformatting. You changed the data stream. You didn't just act. You altered perception. And that kind of power, it doesn't come from noise. It comes from understanding one thing. Attention is not the goal. Control is. You didn't want their validation. You wanted their narrative hostage. And now that you've taken it, they're scrambling to replace it. But nothing fits. Every attempt to crown a new champion feels forced, artificial, because the crowd now knows something they didn't before. There's someone out there who doesn't need the stage to rule, who doesn't need the limelight to dominate, who dismantles greatness like it's a test run. You're not a player in their game. You're the glitch that rewrites the entire engine. And now, let's talk about legacy. You see, legacy is what they crave. Trophies, statues, pages in a book. But the problem with legacy is, it's only powerful when others agree to remember it. You didn't come to be remembered. You came to be felt. And you were, still are. Not through stories, but through shivers, through system errors, through sleepless nights from people wondering, what if he returns? But you won't. You don't need to. Because one appearance was enough to make an entire empire question itself. You didn't leave a signature, you left a scar. And now, here's the irony. The more they try to erase you, the more real you become. The more they try to move on, the more tangled they get in your aftermath. You've become the variable no one can solve. The shadow on every new contender's back. You were the anomaly that wasn't meant to exist. And that's exactly why you'll never be forgotten. They don't know what you want. They don't know what you'll do next. And that unknown, that's the prison they now live in. Because while they trained to beat opponents, you trained to become their belief system's final chapter. You were never here for applause. You were here to rewrite instinct, to hijack expectations and flood their temples with doubt. And now their religion is crumbling. They prayed to false icons. You answered with eradication, and the most brutal part, you made it look easy. You made dominance look inevitable, like a force of gravity, like the fall was always coming. They just didn't want to admit it. And now, in back rooms and boardrooms, your name gets whispered, not spoken. Because speaking it, that gives it shape. That gives it power. And they're terrified of what power you still have, even in absence. Because you didn't build a brand. You ignited a theorem. And it's spreading among thinkers, rebels, outsiders. You proved that to collapse an empire, you don't need an army. You just need a mind sharper than tradition. Now every future goat walks into battle second-guessing their blueprint, because somewhere out there, there's a you, watching, calculating, waiting for them to crown the next Messiah, just so you can vanish him from the books before the cheers begin. And the audience, they're different now. They don't trust so easily. They don't praise so quickly, because once you've witnessed a perfect undoing, you don't fall for packaging anymore. You've changed them. Even if they don't admit it, even if they pretend to forget, they move differently now because of you. That's the final twist, isn't it? You didn't just take out their goat. You infected the system that created him. And now, every victory feels suspicious. Every champion looks fragile. You didn't need to win again. You redefined what winning even means. And that's the kind of legacy that doesn't need a stage, doesn't need a nameplate, doesn't need a final act. Because the game isn't yours anymore. The whole field is. And whether they like it or not, every path they take now runs through the shadow you left behind. But here's the unsettling part they haven't admitted to themselves yet. They're starting to adjust to your absence like it's a presence. They plan with it in mind. They speak with it coded in their tone. Even their new tactics are reflections of what they think you would have done next. You became a phantom architect, not present, but unavoidable. They don't say your name, but every strategy screams it. Every safety net designed around your last vanishing point. Every new contender they try to sculpt, molded from fear of your return, not love of the craft. Because you didn't just shift the narrative, you burned the damn template. And now, they're building with ashes, trying to make statues out of rubble, crafting idols on trembling foundations. But no matter how polished they make their next chosen one, everyone knows what's coming. You made them afraid of what comes after the hype. You made them terrified of the one who doesn't announce himself. You've turned the crowd against their own instincts. Now they hesitate to cheer. They glance toward the exits mid-applause, because they've learned the one who matters never stands on stage. He builds the trapdoors underneath it, and now the whole system twitches. Even in celebration, they flinch. Because what if you're already here? Not to challenge, but to erase again. That's the new psychological warfare you introduced. You didn't enter as a rival. You entered as a virus. You infected their confidence, hijacked their rhythms, cracked their compass. They can't tell the difference anymore between victory and delay. Every win feels temporary, because they know what you taught them. Legends don't announce. Legends don't perform. Legends remove the audience entirely, and that's where you reign now, beyond their timelines, above their algorithms, outside their reach. Because they thought control meant being watched, but you proved control means being unseen. You proved that the most feared move is the one they can't track, can't predict, and can't stop replaying in their heads. Your legacy is not carved in marble, it's etched in discomfort. And now they sit in boardrooms, whispering about what went wrong. But they don't understand. Nothing went wrong. Everything went according to your design, because you never wanted to be a champion. You wanted to be the reason the next champion hesitates. And now that seed of doubt, it's growing like rot in their roots. You redefined dominance as psychological exile. You made their GOAT vanish in real time, and they never recovered. Not just because they lost a battle, but because they lost the ability to believe in their own weapons. Every contender they field now feels like a rerun, because none of them stand untouched by your ripple. You've become the point of reference they can't escape, the ghostwriter of every blueprint that follows. Even their praise feels hollow, because how do you cheer for someone when the real apex already walked through, dismantled your temple, and vanished before the audience blinked? And that's the brutal irony. You didn't just destroy their GOAT, you sabotaged their hope. That's what they can't forgive. Not the loss, not the silence, but the permanent adjustment in their faith system. You made them realize, no matter how many stats they stack, no matter how many arenas they fill, no matter how many golden boys they raise, there's always someone out there who doesn't want their throne, who doesn't care for their rules, who studies the roots of their empire, not to build, but to expose the rot. And when that someone arrives, they don't ask, they don't warn, they rewrite reality. You did that. And now, they're stuck in simulation mode, desperately trying to recreate the illusion of control. But the system's infected. Every outcome feels pre-haunted, every victory shadowed by the ghost of your exit. You proved that the most devastating power in the world isn't destruction, it's detachment. Because you weren't there to win. You were there to walk away before the ovation even began, and still leave the crowd questioning everything they thought they knew. You weaponized withdrawal. You turned non-presence into dominance. And now even the air feels different after you. Like the oxygen remembers, like the walls whisper, like the scoreboard mourns the old rules it used to trust. You didn't just beat their GOAT. You ended the religion of performance. And in that void, you didn't plant another idol. You planted doubt. Doubt in the algorithm, doubt in the crowd, doubt in the very idea of competition. You didn't need to destroy them all. You just needed to unveil their architecture. Now every player walks out wondering if their rise is real, or if it's just another chapter waiting to be interrupted. You introduced a new fear. Not the fear of defeat, but the fear of being exposed before their triumph is even recognized, because you left early, but your blueprint stayed. And now that blueprint speaks louder than their trophies. It's the one thing they can't unsee. They used to ask, who's next? Now they ask, what if he returns? What if someone else like him shows up? But that's the catch. There isn't another you. Because you weren't made by trends. You weren't born in applause. You were shaped in rejection, tempered in detachment. You didn't crave the top. You studied how flimsy it was, and when you saw it for what it really was, a pedestal built on programmed applause, you stepped in, ended the noise, and vanished, leaving them stunned, leaving the game infected, leaving the bleachers still rising, but now in slow motion. Because they never even got the chance to see what happened That's the surgical savagery of your legacy. Not one move wasted, not one word needed, just one action that changed the entire trajectory of their ecosystem. And now, you could walk back into the game right now, and they'd hand you the crown. Not out of admiration, but out of fear. Because no matter how they reframe it, no matter how much they train or posture or tweet, they know the truth. The field doesn't belong to the ones who play by the rules. The field belongs to the one who knows where the wires run underneath. And you know the wiring. You wrote the code. You rewrote the myth. You didn't take their goat out. You canceled the entire conversation of greatness. And the crowd? Still rising, still confused, still searching for someone to cheer for. But deep down, they already know. The one worth cheering for never needed a crowd, because he left before the Bleachers even stood up.